Jackson, and welcome to a little crash course on bluegrass flat picking guitar here. I'm very excited to share this material here with you, and this is, I kind of designed this, for, maybe you're a guitar player who's already developed a certain level of chops. Maybe that's as a blues player, or a rock player, or a jazz player, or a metal player. But maybe you've heard players like Billy Strings or Molly Tuttle or Tony Rice or Brian Sutton, or maybe one day just in your social media feed a video popped up of somebody playing this stuff and it's piqued your interest and you're wanting to get into it. So anyway, that's what I'm here to do, is to just kind of get you started with the basics, to just kind of lay a foundation, and then you can build on that as much as you want to. So I want to go ahead and start off with an example here that might feel a little basic and a little rudimentary, but I promise you is valuable. And all it is this. I want you to just take your open third string, and I want you to just do alternate picking on that. We're going to go 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E, and try to emphasize the downbeats. 1 E and a 2 E, 3 E and a 4 E, 1 E and a 2 E and a 4 E. Like I said, that might feel a little basic, and like I said, maybe even a bit simplistic, but I promise you there's value in that. And the reason is because when we're playing this stuff, one of the things that really differentiates this style from a lot of other styles is we actually use a lot of open strings, because we have to get volume, because the sound comes from the instrument. Even if it's plugged in, the sound is coming, it's being generated through this instrument right here. So when we're playing stuff like, I'm using a lot more open strings there than, say, like a blues player who's doing it. Or if you're like a rock player, doing that. Trying to play Randy Rhoads licks on a flat top here, you're playing a lot of those kind of licks, and you're not using nearly as many open strings as we use in bluegrass. So again, going back here, I promise you that is a great thing to practice. And if that's a little basic for you, come over here to the fourth string and we'll do. So just those right there as 16th notes playing, on the open fourth string and on the open third string. Get a metronome and play that, as 16th notes. Maybe, start slow, at 60, 80 beats a minute, move it up, play it as fast as you want to. But that right there, like I said, I know it feels a little simplistic, but I promise you that is very valuable in that. One other thing, a lot of people ask me, like, how should I hold my pick when I'm playing this style, and what kind of pick do you use? As far as the pick goes, I'm not even sure what kind this is. It's a little, it's just, obviously it's got a very wide angle to it, and it's a 1.14 millimeter pick, so it's thick, but I like the wide angle on it. It makes it easy to hold on to. You can get these at any music store. And then as far as the way that I hold like my hand when I'm picking, I like the back of my wrist kind of lightly rests on the bridge. It's not like a hard plant like that. And like occasionally I'll put a finger down here, but for the most part, I just kind of keep my hand just very lightly. It just kind of touches the bridge pins right there. You're ultimately going to have to figure out what works for you. You can watch a lot of different guitar players, and they hold their hands in different ways. Ultimately, you'll have to figure out what works for you, but a good rule is to avoid unnecessary tension. So anyway, that's just a couple words on that. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about here is what we call cross picking. All that cross picking is alternate picking across adjacent strings. So instead of just, what we're going to do is we're going to go. is it gives it almost a, we're kind of like mimicking a banjo roll almost. So what I would do with that there is, so start on the 4th string open with a down pick, and then we're going to go to the 3rd string open with an up pick, and then the 2nd string open with a down, and then we'll come back to the 3rd string with an up. All right, so that's just down, up, on your 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings, and then you come back to the 3rd. Okay, you'll hear a lot of players use that. You'll hear David Greer use that a lot. You hear Billy Strings use it a lot. You know, that's cross picking. And again, it's just alternate picking across adjacent strings to kind of sort of mimic a banjo roll. All right, so just to recap here real quick, alternate picking on open strings. 1 E, 2 E. Okay, and then maybe do it on one string and then go to another, like 1 E. I promise you that is a very valuable thing to practice when you're getting started in the style. And then cross picking. Two fantastic things to practice when you're getting started in the style. Also, for all the examples in this lesson, you can find the corresponding tablature in the email that accompanies this video. All right. Okay, so another thing that makes this style really unique is the way that we're going to play through chord changes. So in bluegrass, we play over chord changes in the same way that like a jazz player would when they're playing over like a jazz standard. But we have a very unique way that we do this here. So what I want to do is I'm just going to go through 3 different ways of playing some bluegrass lead ideas through a G, C, and a D chord progression. Now the 1-4-5 chord progression is the most commonly used one in traditional bluegrass music. It's not the only one by any stretch of the imagination, but it is very, very commonly used. So I want to just use that as an example here, and I'm just going to go through G, C, and D, and I'm just going to show you 3 kind of very bluegrassy sounding lead ideas that we'll play through these chord changes. So let me start with the first one here, and we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's another one. So for that very first one there, and so that is what we call, that's kind of what we call the G run. That's kind of like, when you play that, it sounds like bluegrass. And we're just going to do that twice, but we're going to do it over each chord. So we're going to start with G, we'll do. Okay, and then we're going to go to C. So we're going to fret that a little different. We'll start over here on the 4th string and we'll do. And then we're going to go down to D, so we're going to do. And then back to G. So we're just taking that one little G run idea, and then we're playing it over C, and then we're playing it over D. So one more time for that first guitar break there. Okay, so now the next one is just going to expand on that idea just a little bit here, and we're going to do. C, and we'll do. ideas in the first break, and just taking that idea and then playing it over C and playing it over D. So we've got... So there's two ways of going through G, C, and D. Let's do one more here where, again, we're going to take that same idea and we're going to build on it just a little bit more. We're going to do... Okay, so one more time on that one, we'll do... Alright, and then we're going to go over to C and we'll do... We'll do that one again on C. And then we'll come over to D and we'll do... One more time on D. And then back to G. Again, those are just three, again, very bluegrass sounding lead guitar ideas that we'll play through a G, C, and a D chord progression. I like to focus on this because I get a lot of people asking me when they're wanting to get into this style, they're like, what scales should I learn? Or what scales should I play? And I'll be honest with you, when I'm playing this style, I'm not really thinking so much in terms of scales. I'm thinking about ideas played through chord changes. Because if you just, if you've got, a bluegrass song, and you just try to... and you're just playing like your pentatonic scales, it doesn't really work for this style. Now, for sure, 100%, it is a very good idea to know all of your pentatonic and diatonic scales and all your major and minor keys. If you're a lead guitar player, you should know those. But I don't really emphasize playing scales in this style. I emphasize playing ideas through chord changes, similar to the way that like a jazz player would. So let me go through all three of those one more time. So example one. I'm sorry. Example 3. All right. Okay, so one of the biggest parts of flat picking guitar is fiddle tunes. That's a huge part of this. And a lot of times when somebody, comes to me and says, hey, what should I do to start learning flat picking guitar? I just say, learn a bunch of fiddle tunes. So here's what I'm going to do for this lesson. After this video clip, I'm going to play you 2 videos of me playing 2 very commonly played fiddle tunes for flat picking guitar. And those are Red Haired Boy and Gold Rush. Now with both of those tunes, I'm going to play through those 2 times. The first time through is going to be like a really basic fiddle melody, and the second time is going to be a little bit more of an advanced version there. So you can see how, these fiddle tunes are, these have just been handed down, over the decades and sometimes over the centuries. And so, people approach these in a little bit of a different way, but for most of these, there's a pretty standard agreed upon basic melody. So you can kind of hear how I'll play a basic melody version and a more advanced version. And then with both of those tunes, you can reference the accompanying tabs with this, and you can jump in and learn both versions of each tune note for note. It's all spelled out there in the tabs. And in addition to that, I've also included a recommended list of, like I said, there's hundreds of these tunes. You don't have to go out and learn 100 fiddle tunes, but I've got a recommended list of about 15 that I recommend that people learn when they're getting into this style. And I've also got, for each one of the tunes, I've got a recommended listening. Like maybe Doc Watson has recorded this, or Tony Rice has recorded this, or Billy Strings, or Brian Sutton. And I'll give you a recommended listening for each tune. That way you can go through and hear how like a real master of this style has played those. So anyway, I'll play the videos of both Red Haired Boy and Gold Rush, and you can reference the tabs and jump into those and learn those note for note. All right. So where I want to go from here is I want to jump in and I want to show you a couple of, I call them lead breaks to vocal songs. Now when I say a break, that's just what we commonly refer to as, what we commonly refer to like a solo, whether it's a guitar solo or a mandolin solo or a banjo solo. We a lot of times in bluegrass we call those breaks, and I'm calling it lead breaks to vocal songs. Okay, and again, the reason I say vocal songs is because in the context of bluegrass, instrumentals are a big part of this. You can kind of go back to the early days of bluegrass with Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, and one of the most famous tunes, that they would have would be like Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Well, Foggy Mountain Breakdown was actually, I think that was with Flatt and Scruggs, but you have really famous banjo tunes and fiddle tunes, which we covered in the previous section, and like Bill Monroe mandolin tunes. So instrumental music is a big part of bluegrass. So that's why I differentiate lead breaks to instrumental songs, to lead breaks to vocal songs. But this is a very important part of it here. So what I wanted to do here is I'm going to show you, you know, one of my, I think one of the all-time classics, one of the best here, and this is Tony Rice doing the song 9-Pound Hammer. Now, he recorded this several times over his career. The version I'm going to be playing for you here comes from the original recording from the Manzanita album, which go listen to that album all the way through if you haven't. It is flat picking gold. It is so good. So anyway, I want to play this here for you, and I'm going to play through and I'm going to sing it one time, that way you can hear the melody, and then I'm going to play Tony Rice's break or solo to this song. Alright, so here it is, 9-Pound Hammer. Well, the 9-pound hammer is a little too heavy. It's for my size, honey, for my size. Well, roll on, buddy, don't you roll so slow. How can I roll when the wheels won't go? So, yeah, this is just classic Tony Rice, and, you know, Tony Rice is probably the most influential player in this style. He's almost certainly the most influential player in this style. So I wanted to show this here to you. So again, I got the capo on the 2nd fret here, and so the chords here, go from G, is a little too, we go to C, and then back to G, and then we go to D, and back to G. Do that twice. All right, so let's jump into it here. So we're going to do, so this is classic Tony Rice here. Let's kind of jump in and analyze it just a little bit here. So at the beginning, so that's just kind of like a, you know, kind of coming out of that pentatonic box, but using some open strings. And then, all right, so we're going over into that C shape. It's technically a D chord. Very familiar. Alright, and then we're going to jump up. So that's kind of coming up, you know, out of that kind of 3rd pentatonic pattern. So you can hear a lot of blues in Tony Rice's playing there, but that's a very classic Tony Rice style lead break to a vocal song there. So that's kind of what I like to start people off with. But definitely go through and listen to the whole Manzanita album. Listen to 9-Pound Hammer, but listen to that whole album. It is just, it's absolute gold for this style of playing. Alright, so another lead break to a vocal song here, and honestly this is the artist and the tune that I think has gotten a whole like a lot of people into this style. So I'm gonna go, we're gonna do Dust in a Baggie by Billy Strings, and I'm just gonna do the like the guitar solo again that he plays from the original recording. There's tons of live recordings of this out there. You can find it all over the internet. But again, I'm gonna reference the original studio recording of this. So kind of coming out of the chorus of the song, you know, I use my own phone call to contact my daddy. I got 20 long years for some dust in a baggie. So just some classic Billy Strings here, and you can see how a lot of the concepts that we've talked about kind of up until this point in this video lesson here, he's using a lot of. So let's kind of jump into, let me go through the whole thing really slow here first, and then we'll kind of analyze it a little bit more. So we'll do. So at the beginning here, you know, a lot of little open strings kind of based around this little G shape here. So and then he jumps up here and does a really cool little run with some kind of cross picking here, and we do. All right, so that is. And then, so again, from the beginning. Comes down here and does this really cool kind of descending pentatonic run. But uses the open strings there to give it a really, you know, kind of a classic bluegrass sound. And then bend right here. Okay, so really cool little break. And again, with all of these, you can reference the tabs that accompany the email with this video, and kind of go through those. But yeah, I mean, that's just a great little break, and it kind of really, you know, shows you, you know, the way we'll use open strings, the way we kind of play through chord changes, and the way we'll use some cross picking, which are just really kind of classic little bluegrass techniques. All right. Okay, so this style of playing is a very technical style, and that's what draws a lot of people to it. You know, you hear somebody, you know, playing this stuff, and it's very impressive, you know, the speed and the technique that it takes to pull this stuff off. So, and there's just nothing to hide behind. You don't have any cool amp sounds or any effects or anything like that. It's just your hands and an acoustic guitar. It's all there is. So I wanted to show you a couple of exercises that you can use to develop your picking and fretting technique. All right, so let me go ahead and start real quick with just a little left hand exercise. Now this one, gosh, I think actually Steve Vai published this like back in Guitar Player magazine in the 80s, but I love it. I think it's a great left hand exercise. It really just kind of gets the blood flowing into your left hand here. And what that is we're going to take this first fret and the 7th fret on your first string, and then just kind of do hammer-ons and pull-offs between those. And do that for 1 minute. All right? If a minute's too much, do it for 30 seconds. That's fine. And then after we do it for a minute, we're going to switch to this. Index and middle finger on that 5th and 6th fret. Let's do it again for a minute, and if a minute's too much, do 30 seconds. And then from there, we're going to come over here, that 5th and 8th fret, okay, with the index and pinky finger for 1 minute. All right, and then after we've done that, we're going to do this. So middle finger on the 6th fret, and then hammer on and pull off with the ring finger from the 7th fret to the 6th, okay? For 1 minute. And then let's come up here, pinky finger on the 8th fret, pulling off to the 6th fret of the first string with your middle finger for 1 minute. And then if that wasn't enough, let's do the ring finger on the 7th fret and go in between the ring and the pinky finger on that fret and do that for 1 minute. That's an amazing left hand exercise. I try to do that every single day. I try to not let a day go by without doing that. And again, if a minute's too much, do it for 30 seconds. I think the key there is to just keep that whole thing going and don't stop. All right, so obviously after that, you might want to, kind of massage your fingers off a little bit, because that's quite the workout for your left hand. But I find that's a great little left hand exercise. But the majority of what we're going to need to work on with this stuff is going to be in your picking hand, okay? So in the earlier section, I talked about cross picking. And you can do just practice that with a drum track or with a metronome. That's a great picking exercise. That is a fantastic picking exercise, but it can get a little monotonous and a little boring here. So I've got a little pattern here that I want to show you that doubles as it's kind of a cool sounding musical example, but doubles as a great picking exercise. So we're going to do I'm just see middle finger on, let's see, 12th fret of the 4th, ring finger 12th fret of the 2nd, and we're just leaving that 3rd string open. We're kind of letting that drone out, and that's just down on the 4th, up on the 3rd, down on the 2nd, up on the 3rd. So we're doing okay, and then just move this shape down to the 10th fret. And then come over here and we'll do, so right here, this is middle on the 9th fret of the 4th, index on the 8th fret of the 2nd. We'll move that down 2 frets to the 7th fret on your middle finger, 6th fret on the index, 5th fret, again leaving that 3rd string open the whole time, 3rd fret, and then we'll do. That is a fantastic little cross picking. Is a really great thing to practice for developing your picking hand. Okay, so that's a great picking exercise. I have another picking exercise that I want to show you here that I like a lot that uses our G, C, and our D chord. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with a G chord here, and here let me play it for you real quick. We'll do. Let's try that again here. So I'm gonna start with G here, and what we're gonna do, pick down up on the 6th string, and then we're gonna skip the 5th string and go to the 4th string, pick down up on that, and then we're gonna come back, play the 5th string, skip the 4th and go to the 3rd, play the 4th, 2nd, 3rd, and 1st. All right, and then we'll do the same thing coming back down, and we'll do. Okay, and then we'll go to C, and we'll do. Okay, changing the pattern up just a little bit there because we're playing each one of these chords for 2 bars, and so the picking changes just a little bit, but on that one, so. And then we're going to go to D, and what we're going to do on D is we're going to go. So down up on the 4th string, down up on the 2nd, down up on the 3rd, down up on the 1st, and we're going to do that 4 times. We're going to go. And then we'll go back to G. Okay, so one more time we'll do. That's developing your alternate picking, but it's also really having to develop your accuracy because you're skipping a string every time. So it really forces your hand to get super accurate and really clean there. So anyway, that little left hand exercise, the cross picking exercise, and that string skipping alternate picking exercise through G, C, and D, those are fantastic things to practice to develop your picking and your fretting technique. Okay, so one of the most important elements of bluegrass playing is timing. Now obviously timing is important in any musical endeavor. I mean, it's a very important part of musicianship in general, but it's really important for guitar players playing this style because we don't, typically in a bluegrass band, you don't have a drummer. I know there's some bands like, Sam Bush, a lot of times will play with a drummer, Newgrass Revival played with a drummer, but for the most part, when we're playing this stuff, we don't have a drummer. So your timing really has to be on point. So I wanted to just kind of show you a couple of things that have kind of worked for me. So the most commonly used tool for working on your timing is the metronome, and the metronome is a great tool. We can, I've got it on 80 beats a minute here. So kind of that first little alternate picking example we did, we just do like. Just as 16th notes. And you can do the cross picking. Too. We can do Tony Rice's 9-pound hammer, 3, 4. And yes, the metronome is a great tool for that. It's not my favorite though. Now it's hard to beat just playing along with music. But I find sometimes when you're doing that, you can kind of get lost, and sometimes you can kind of that's definitely a great thing to do. I recommend it. But sometimes it's easy to kind of listen to what the other what the other musicians are doing, and sometimes you might be playing a little out of time and you don't realize it. Here's my favorite tool for really working on your timing, and that's a drum track. So, you know, there's obviously a lot of different drum machines that you can download. I like just finding a what they call a train beat. And here's what a train beat sounds like. All right, you hear that? And I like that because the kick drum is hitting on the downbeats, but then the snare drum is hitting those 16th notes. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So you hear exactly where those 16th notes fall. And when you're practicing with that, especially if you've got it kind of turned up, you know, pretty loud to where you can really hear it, it almost forces you to play in time. So let's try this here. All right, so it's just a lot easier to play in time with this. Cross picking, 9-pound hammer. Fiddle tunes. That's my favorite tool for it because, again, that snare drum is hitting those 16th notes, so you can hear exactly where those fall. And like I said, if you'll turn it up a little bit, or maybe even practice like with one earbud in and one earbud out, or put that thing on a Bluetooth speaker and crank it up, it forces you to play in time. That's my favorite tool for really working on your timing there, which is something you do not want to neglect, especially as a guitar player in this style of music, because we don't have a drummer, so our timing has to be really on point there. Okay, so I wanted to thank you for taking the time to jump into this video lesson here. And just to kind of recap what we've covered, we talked about alternate picking on your open strings. We talked about cross picking. Okay, we did 3 bluegrass lead ideas through G, C, and D, so you can see how we play through chord changes in this style and how it's different than, say, a blues player or a rock player or a jazz player would do that. We then went through and we learned 2 fiddle tunes, Red Haired Boy and Gold Rush, and I showed you kind of a basic version and a more advanced version, and I've also got a recommended listening list and a recommended list of fiddle tunes to learn. And then from there we went through and we dove into 2 really killer classic bluegrass solos. We did 9-Pound Hammer by Tony Rice, we did Dust in a Baggie by Billy Strings, and then from there we went in and we talked about how to work on and practice your timing. Again, my favorite resource for practicing timing is a drum track, specifically a train beat. And then, you know, we talked about, you know, I showed you some really great exercises for your fretting hand and for your picking hand. So I promise you, if you will dive in and really practice those examples and really get those down, that will lay a great solid foundation, again, for you to build on and get into this style as deep as you want to. So from here, just some players that I would recommend checking out. You know, a lot of people have gotten into this style through Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle. I love both of those players. They are great. Listen to everything they've got. They are awesome. Some other ones I would recommend, obviously, is Tony Rice. Tony Rice is probably the most influential player in this style, but going back even further, go back to Doc Watson. Listen to Doc Watson. We don't have a whole lot of recordings from Clarence White, but I would recommend really, you know, trying to find what there is from Clarence White and listening to that. He's you know, kind of one of the original pioneers of flat picking guitar, specifically in the context of bluegrass bands. Dan Crary is also great. You know, check out his album Ladies Fancy and Bluegrass Guitar. Those are great flat picking recordings. And then, you know, from there, you know, check out David Greer. David Greer is, you know, one of my favorites. He really has a very cool, unique, kind of idiosyncratic style, but it's really cool to listen to. David Greer is great. Listen to Kenny Smith. His album Studebaker is really cool, and he also used to play in a band called the Lonesome River Band, and so it's, you know, go back and, you know, check out the Lonesome River Band albums that he's on. Really great stuff. Tim Stafford is an amazing, again, very unique guitar player and songwriter. His band is called Blue Highway. I would recommend listening to all of their stuff. It's really great. Trey Hensley is awesome. Listen to Trey Hensley and Rob Ickes. I think they've done 3 albums. Very cool stuff. You know, and you know, Brian Sutton is amazing. He played in Ricky Skaggs' band for years, but his album Not Too Far From the Tree is just a collection of him doing duets with like Doc Watson and Tony Rice and Dan Crary and Russ Barenberg and David Greer and all the great flat pickers, just doing fiddle tunes. So really check that one out. Not Too Far From the Tree by Brian Sutton. And I'm sure I left a couple of players out there, but if you'll go through and check out those players, you know, you can really, you know, you can really start to get a grip on this style. And there really is no better way to learn than by listening to the greats and learning what they've done, and then you can kind of pull a little bit from Doc Watson and Tony Rice and David Greer and Brian Sutton and kind of put all that stuff together and eventually come up with your own thing. But definitely check those players out, and like I said, practice the examples that I've showed you here in this video lesson, and that will set a really good foundation for you to, you know, delve into this style as much as you want to. So again, thanks so much for diving into this. Hope to see you down the road.